Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Sorry about the wait. I hope it was worth the wait. Yes, so in the first part of this live stream today, thank you for everybody for coming, for sticking around. So far, we've shared some New Year's resolutions that we have for this next year as teachers. But you're also welcome to share some New Year's resolutions as students as well. Some people, some iTalki teachers have asked me about different questions. For example, how to make a curriculum, how to make conversational lessons more exciting. Um, if I've ever met any of my students in real life, we've had teachers from a whole lot of different countries swing by so far, so I appreciate all of that. So if you have any questions for me, you could feel free and ask away. Say hello. Perfect. All right, and I'll find some smart person emojis to put in here as well to kick this off. Excellent. Good stuff. Great stuff. So I'll be hanging around for another 45 minutes. If you have any questions at all, go ahead and ask away. In the first part of this Q&A, I also gave some tips on how to be successful this holiday season. Yeah, so I gave different tips, such as the importance to communicate with your students what your availability will be throughout the season. They may assume that you have that you won't have open availability, for example. Also to be aware that your students may have holidays themselves. So to be aware of that, to be cognizant of that. Another thing which could be important is for you to create different package deals for your students, for example, so that your students might be more inclined to actually book lessons with you if they see package deals. For the new year, you could have a special sale for the new year or have a special deal for the holidays, for example, if you're teaching, and also to stick by that. That's another thing I spoke about, that you should stick to any discount, any kind of like marketing campaign that you do on iTalki. If you're going to say, all right, for the month of January, I'm going to have this price, and you advertise that, your students will remember. So try not to back down on that. All right. Yeah, so I hope that's helpful to teachers. Welcome to the live Q&A. Hello, Sven. Hello, Sven. So now that I've told you what my age is, I'd like to know what your age is. How old are you? And as you tell me, I'm just going to write this. Welcome to the live Q&A. Feel free to ask any question you have about iTalki or teaching online or my age. All right. Yes, this is the time. So some of the teachers who were here before, they popped out actually to teach classes, which is super exciting to know that some of you are actually getting classes and getting a decent amount of classes, this could be a great time to get classes on iTalki, over the holiday season. Oh, Sven's the same age as I am. Okay, cool. Well, if I do a little um, Valentine's Day edition Q&A, then who knows? Maybe I'll remember your birthday and I'll wish you a happy birthday for the 27th of February. That's uh, that's awesome. Yeah. Most people in my family, I have two brothers, two sisters, and all of us have fall and winter birthdays. Yeah, for the most part. So, as you could guess, December is a very exciting time for me because I have my birthday in December, and there's Christmas and there's New Year's. It's a great time. All right, perfect. So while we're sitting here, uh, until anyone has iTalki related questions, I'm going to share some resources with you all. Some resources which I have found useful. Okay. Hmm, hmm, hmm. Resources. So I actually made a Google Doc, and I'm thinking I may just end up sharing it with you all so we could have a look at them. Resources. Academic mentorship. That's not it. Let's have a look. I've taught so many students this week that finding a Google Doc could take a long time. Um, I've been compiling a lot of my here we are, tech tools. That's what it is. Fantastic. So I'll share this with all of you and I'll just put it on viewer mode. But if you have any like resources that you would like to add, then just put them in the chat here on YouTube. Awesome. There are some right there. Hopefully the first live Q&A is going to be on your channel. I saw plenty of useful links for when iTalki accepts me. Yeah, I hope so too, Sven. 100%. That's awesome. Yes, that's the plan. It will be available on my channel for sure. So this link right here that I've just pasted, it has some new tech tools. So this could be a good opportunity for some teachers, sorry, to go through and kind of get used to some of these tools before the new year, potentially. Yeah, maybe you could send some of these to your students and they could try them, use them for homework, for example. One thing I've recognized lately is that less is more to a certain extent. I've become quite trigger happy with using digital resources, right? Like I just want to use every tool that I could fit into my tool belt. But there are a lot of tools that kind of do this more or less the same thing. And if you give too many of these to your students, it may overwhelm them, especially students who don't have as much digital literacy. Luckily, a lot of my students are software developers. So this is really their bread and butter. I mean, navigating these kinds of applications and tools, it's no problem for them. I've had one student ask, okay, I don't really want to use all of these, to be using so many different tools. And I respect that. So one thing I've changed in my teaching is to be more kind of cognizant of this. And moving forward, I'm definitely going to be the first to tell my students, hey, if there are too many resources, just let me know. Because when I first implemented my curriculum with all of these resources, like like Google Sites and Jamboard and SoundCloud and Blogger. When I experienced a little bit of pushback, I just assumed that it was due to the lack of motivation or lack of investment from my students, right? So over time, I've recognized that's not what it is. It's sometimes less is more, and some students would rather not have to navigate through, 10 or 15 tools all the time, or websites or applications, right? So that's definitely something I've learned along the road. Okay, cool. So this is awesome. I see a few of you have gone into this doc right here. So yeah, you could see this is actually these are the resources that people in one of my technology mediated language learning classes in my master's degree have all of us have pooled our resources together. So that's where these tech resources come from. You could see different resources that are, it's kind of like chaotic right now. I've just kind of copied and pasted all of this from the thread. But some that I like, I'm just going to highlight them. Like this one, Padlet. I really want to start using Padlet in the new year. So I'll put that as my resolution, New Year's resolution 5. I think we're on. No, I think we're on 6. Not like it matters. Not like you're all counting. New Year's resolution 6. Padlet. I want to start using Padlet. I think Quizlet would be a good one as well. Quizlet. For me as a language learner, for Hindi, for Arabic, I like to use Memrise actually, but I'll definitely be checking out Quizlet as well. Like I have accidentally found some decks, some vocabulary decks for anybody who doesn't know. People typically like to thanks, Ben. People typically like to use uh, Quizlet for vocabulary building. Not always, but that's one way to use it. Yeah, like I've accidentally come across some decks on when I'm language learning, but I found that some of them aren't completely like they'll just have some random words like thrown in together instead of like an organized kind of linear step by step. Like maybe the top most useful or common 100 words or 50 words or something like that. That's what I have been more into as a language learner. But sometimes, just getting random words, the element of surprise could help you to learn a language as well. So I'm open to it now. Learning Quizlet or using Quizlet, pardon me, could be good for my students and for me myself. Um, yeah, aside from that, using Corpora. I'm not sure if anybody here has used Corpora with their students. This is something that I always say, I'm going to get around to it, right? Looking at a corpus could be useful because basically you're able to search the use of different phrases or different terms. And a corpus could have hundreds, or if not thousands, of different magazines, movies, newspapers, books, and they will find the frequency of these words for you, right? So it really helps with the shades of gray of English. For example, if you're not sure if you should be using on the weekend or at the weekend, you could check out a corpus and you will see just by the filters, the way that it's used, the common ways of usage, that in British English, it's used much more at the weekend. And on the weekend is used much more in Canada, for example, and in America, from what I see as well, right? So if there are shades of gray in English, and it's kind of like, um, if your students, for example, if your students find a prepositional phrase, maybe to connect to versus to connect with. and they're not sure what the difference is between those two, you could show them a corpus, and this will give them a range of actual examples, like point blank examples, um, where they could see in real context how they're used and what the differences are. All right, Diane, where's the best place to get learning materials and lesson plans? Right here. No, I'm kidding. For me, the best place is Breaking News English. It's the easiest for me, but somebody in the first part of the Q&A today suggested off to class. So I'm going to paste both of those right here. But I always go for Breaking News English if I ever need it. I'd say I've only used this as a resource to I'm going to stand up here. That's why I have a standing desk as well. I've only really used this for some classes with beginner level students or lower intermediate level students, but they do have advanced level lessons as well. Or I've used it to give myself inspiration for planning my curriculum. But I know about teachers who have used Breaking News English in a number of situations and contexts. So it's definitely worth checking it out along with Off to Class. All right, Florence says she is struggling to book students as a new teacher. What could you do? Well, basically, I have dozens of videos to help you out with that as well. In a nutshell, something as I have spoken about today in part one of this Q&A is to really seize the opportunity, Florence. Seize the opportunity that this is the holiday season. You could start 2022 off with a bang. And I think one of the best ways to do it is to run a little sale on your lessons going into next year. Take advantage of the fact that you may have some time off, so you may be able to plan your curriculum. If you have any questions about your curriculum, about your plan, you could reach out to me on Instagram. You could reach out to me on iTalki. I will run through it roughly and just give you a couple pointers. If you want more in-depth explanations, feel free to book a consultation, but I'm not just trying to get a consultation. I will respond to you if you just message me, right? But basically what I say to my to teachers, other teachers, have an open schedule, right? A low price, like a very polished profile. Once you have that, good. Now you need to have a good methodology. So now you start to develop your curriculum, you start to plan out your classes, get some good activities, and have an awesome trial lesson. I've just posted a video with my trial lesson that I've done with a real teacher. And by the way, well, she's a real student, but she's also a teacher on iTalki for Japanese. And by the way, check out Yuki's channel if you haven't already. I think it's Koyuki's Classroom. And I'll just check that just to make sure. Definitely check out her YouTube channel. She has a YouTube channel as well. Koyuki's Classroom. Ba, 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 ba. Yeah, it's definitely that one. Oh, it's Koyuki_Japan. Sorry about that. If you can't find that one, then Koyuki. She is such a nice lady, an absolute breath of fresh air, and she's a Japanese teacher on iTalki. She took a lesson with me for English. We had a great chat, and I give you a demonstration of a trial lesson that I've used with many students. Check that. Okay, hope that helps, Florence. Moon. Joe, could I call you Joe or do I call you Moon? How do you set up the schedule during the holiday season? Good question. I wish I could share my screen. Maybe I can, but I am a noob with this. So anyway, I'll just explain it to you. For me, I have a lot of availability. So for that reason, I will have, basically full availability probably from, I guess, when I start. Usually I start at 6:30 in the morning. Sometimes I start at 7 or 7:30 in the morning, I'll probably like condense it down to 7:30, and that runs all the way to, maybe 9 o'clock at night. Do I get students that late? No. Most of my students book in the morning. I'm an early bird, so it's no problem for me, right? Um, but yeah, like I think that's a big thing, especially if you live in North America. The early bird catches the worm, because a lot of your students live in Europe, or maybe in Asia, and the clocks are far ahead. So getting start, I'm not sure, you may be from Korea, but yeah, like I would, like for me, I always have my mornings available. People don't usually book in the evening, so I just leave it open so that hopefully iTalki decides to kind of push my profile further up, because I have more available hours. But at the same time, if you have too much availability, just like if you have too low a price, that could potentially deter students, because they may think, oh, okay, this guy might be a little bit tired. He might be a little bit out of gas by the time, like at least that's what I think when I see teachers with 24-hour availability. I'm like, no, 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 because I assume that they'll probably be tired, teaching every 4 hours over like a 24-hour period, which isn't always the case. I know there are some teachers who keep 24 hours open so that the algorithm benefits them. And then I assume they change they change the classes so they could condense it into one like 6 or 7 hour period. Um, but yeah, teach their own. For me, I'm going to have complete availability on like the 21st, 22nd, 23rd. Some availability on the 24th, no availability on the 25th, some on the 26th, 27th, 8th, 9th, 30th, all open. And then on the 31st, I'll have some availability and zero on New Year's. Yeah. So basically, the only days I'm completely taking off are New Year's and Christmas Day. I'm just going to pop these guys in. It may make the audio a little bit better. Okay, dope. So if you're tuning in, welcome. I'm answering any and all questions about iTalki today, so that you could have an excellent start to 2022 and a fantastic end to 2021 on the platform. So if you have any questions, if you're curious, curious to know anything about attracting students on the platform, improving your lessons, feel free, throw them in there. While we're waiting, I'll just tell you I'll reiterate some of the common mistakes that I made when I first got started. Okay, all right. Joe's back. Okay, so you live in Switzerland. Oh, fantastic. How's your French learning this year? Want to know your experience too as a student. Yes, well, actually, I reached a high level of French. I reached C1 level of French, which was beyond what I had ever expected. I was absolutely addicted to learning earlier this year, and I have just lost all of it. Because what happened during the summer is that I completely dropped French and German and Spanish and all the languages I was learning before, and I began focusing on other languages, learning alphabets. Basically, I just became very interested in learning alphabets, such as the Russian alphabet, the Arabic alphabet, the Hindi alphabet. And the Korean alphabet. So that's kind of been my project recently. Recently, I've actually signed up for Lingoda. So I'm taking lessons, French lessons on iTalki, but also on Lingoda. I'm taking group lessons. So I've been doing this sprint on Lingoda. I've missed a few classes because, hey, life happens. But typically, French is just, gosh, it's just my first love. I don't know what to say. It was the first language I began learning in school, and of course, in school, I didn't really pay attention. I didn't really enjoy French. In Canada, for me at least, I began learning it in grade 5, so I was like 10 years old, and I only learned it until grade 8 when I was 13. So I only learned it for 4 years. Hello, Maud. Welcome back. Yeah, so actually learning on iTalki has been fantastic, but I have missed the group learning experience. That's why I've switched over to Lingoda. My French is improving right now, but I still don't have the confidence as I used to have. So I think this is a good thing because it just goes to show that I experience some of the same issues as my students in terms of, oh, merci, fantastique. Merci. Yeah, I just have the same difficulties as my students to one extent or another in terms of maintaining, investment and motivation. All right, me, welcome back, me. How are your bookings right this December? Actually, yesterday I had my first day where I had two new students, two trial lessons in the same day. And that was the first time that has happened since, I don't know, maybe the summer. So it's not like I have students just pouring in all the time, like new students every day, which was the case last April and last May, which is why getting started on iTalki right now is probably a great idea because hopefully you'll have a solid base by like the spring. And for one reason or another, I've had good luck in the spring, and you may as well, right? So, yeah, so this is the first time that I've had two new students in one day. I think this week I've had four new students, which is fantastic. That's more than it's been recently. Aside from that, most of my students are just loyal students, long-term students who always end up coming back. And yeah, like that's the importance of having these students, right? Because when I first got started on iTalki, I thought it was like so interesting. Like it was kind of like you were just unlocking a map of all of these countries, of all of these proficiency levels, all of these students, right? Like there was so much diversity. But unfortunately, like on the other hand, I started kind of conceptualizing this as more of like a quantifiable thing, right? Like I have this many students from Russia. I have this many students who are children. Like I started kind of like putting students into boxes, which I don't think was very fair, and I still don't think is very fair. So yeah, so now now I try to focus a little bit more on maintaining my, like instead of just thinking about getting new students, I focus more on just keeping the students who I have and maintaining those relationships, right? But of course, when I get new students, I appreciate that as well. So if anyone wants to learn English, book with iTalki teacher Ryan or any of the other teachers out here. All right, happy days. Maud asks, have you seen an improvement in a long-term student? Oh, yes. I have this one student from Ukraine, and he booked like more than 100 lessons with me, nearly 150 lessons. And the change I saw was absolutely incredible. Like from, maybe a high A2 level, low B1 level to C1 level, no doubt. It was fantastic. We started with IELTS and then we ended up doing conversational English. And that's one of the things that's kept me on the platform, man. Like just seeing this incredible improvement. One thing is that I don't see as much improvement as other italki teachers see, possibly due to the fact that a lot of my students are higher level. And what you see at the beginning, like, for any of you who want to learn a language or any of you who have learned a language, you'll probably know this. If you're really motivated and you're really interested in the language at the beginning and you do it obsessively, and there's something like a lockdown in COVID, something crazy like that, you could make a lot of headway very, very fast. You could improve your language competence at an incredible rate. And that's what happened for me in German and Italian and Portuguese and all of these languages, right? When everything was shut down and I was stuck at home. So it's the same with my students, with my lower level students, let's say A2 level, because for me, I don't really have many, I don't have like any A1 level students anymore. Um, I don't see that dramatic increase, that dramatic improvement. But one of the most magical things for me as a teacher is seeing my students maintain their levels, because that's one of the more difficult things. For higher level students, it's maintaining, getting over plateaus, keeping their motivation. Those are some of the things that are you will see are even more difficult. An advanced level student, they know how to try out a new grammatical structure or a new, like, use new vocabulary, but to actually use it in a meaningful way, to put it into their active memory, and to keep a good relationship with English and to create new strategies that improve their relationship with English, that's a tricky thing, you know? Um, yes. Joe, do your loyal students ask for locking the price? Interesting. If yes, hmm, increasing. Okay, interesting. Yeah, that's a big question. Locking the price, no. I had one student who asked me, like, "Are you going to increase the price again?" Right? Or like, because I don't really want to waste my time. And that was actually the guy who I was talking about before, who booked many, many lessons with me, and I saw a great improvement. And I said for him, yes, I'll like, I'm not going to increase it for you anymore. I'll just like keep it the way it is. Actually, I increased my price so much in my first year on iTalki. At one point, I brought it, from 8, and slowly over the first 6 months, it went up to maybe like 17 or $18. And I thought at that point, I thought that even $15, like minimum wage in Canada, is like out of this world. Like, how could how could I reasonably ask for 15 bucks an hour when I'm just rolling out of bed and teaching? It seemed too easy for me, right? And at that point, my lessons weren't high enough quality. So I started to lose some students as I was raising. Oh, sorry. I started to lose some students as I was raising the price. For some reason, Siri keeps coming up. Okay. And then I actually sent a mass like message to all of my students, just saying I'm not going to raise the price for any of you, just to let you know, right? So that was the only time that I've ever communicated with my students without them having to come to me anything about price. And that was kind of in response to one or two of my students asking me, "Will you be increasing the price?" Right? Yeah. Aside from that, I haven't locked the price, and that student isn't learning with me anymore. um, and I think just in general, if my students ever asked to lock the price for me, I would not do it at this point, because I guess I'm well enough established on italki. um, but if it's your first year on italki, like your first 6 months, and you have a good relationship with the student, meaning that you have ideally conversational lessons, because then you don't have to really lesson plan, and you actually enjoy speaking to the student, like it's enough of a pleasure speaking to a student that keeping the price at, like 12 or 13 or 15 or whatever amount is like, it's not going to be like a big headache, right? Then yeah, like I suggest locking the price. But your question was after how many months? Well, it's as much a question about months as it is about lessons. And for me, I think that with the student, okay, I get what you're saying. Yeah, like it is just as much a matter of the lessons as it is about the time, right? Um, so I think for me, with that student, it was about 6 months, and it was about 2 lessons a week. So probably 40 lessons that I decided to like lock the price. Yeah, I think 40 lessons, 4 packages at that point to lock the price, or even just to give them, considerable discounts, that to me is a good time to do that after about, half a year with you. But I don't know, Joe, how long have you been on iTalki for? How long have you been teaching? I wonder. Mod says, I see your channel. Oh, thank you very much, Mod. Wow. Yeah, exactly. Well, I hope this helps you. I hope this helps teachers who are on iTalki, teachers who are not on iTalki. Yeah, like my channel actually started once upon a time as a channel for traveling teachers who were traveling. Like half my videos were about travel, and then I recognized that is just not the niche I'm going for. That's not like my area of expertise, and I kind of narrowed it down to italki. But that doesn't mean it can't be useful to other teachers, so I appreciate that. Oh, thank you very much, Joe. I appreciate that. Well, I appreciate everybody watching my videos and interacting. As long as you watch the videos and you know leave comments, then oh no, but 300 plus lessons, that's excellent, Joe. Yeah, and 3 to 4 months, that's awesome. Well, that's really going to help you once there is, I guess, a wave, like the next wave of students on italki. That's really going to look good on your profile, because when I don't know, as a student on italki, as a French student, a German student, a Spanish student, I've looked for teachers who were actually new because I knew that they would have lower prices, and I knew that most of the time they were a little bit more motivated. Right now, I'm not calling you new. Like I would actually say that you are more uh, that you're more experienced than a lot of people, than a lot of teachers on italki. But yeah, like for me as a student, I actually looked for teachers with less experience for those two reasons. But I also recognized that after 3 or 4 weeks of being on italki, or even 2 months of being on italki, teachers could burn out. So for me as a student, it was like very much about, like, it was like strategic. It's like, okay, I'll book a couple lessons for when they first get started, and then I'll leave the rest of them for like a little bit later, because I know what happens, right? And I'd rather like pay nothing than to have a teacher who's like just falling over, which I've had before in French. I've had a few teachers who are like really really tired, so you know these things are more understandable, and they're better after you build rapport with your students, because then your students could understand if you're tired. Everybody has bad days, you know but if it's at the very get-go, then that could be a little bit tough, because they don't know if this will be a pattern or not, this kind of behavior. And that's the reason why I try to tell teachers to try to avoid burning out at the beginning. I just had a teacher book a consultation with me because she's having a little burnout right now as an italki teacher. So there you go. It happens to the best of us. And she's been teaching for a few months, you know. Same. I also look for new teachers for cheaper price. Yeah, exactly. It's like the hidden secret, way to help their algorithm. Oh, very nice. Yeah, I mean, that's why I do it too, to help their algorithm. As long as their profile attracts me. Yeah, that's it exactly. Because, why should a new teacher struggle just because they have less statistics? If they have, like, there's just as good a chance that they are a hidden gem and they're just getting started and they have a low price, but that does not reflect the quality of their lessons. Like, I know some teachers who I have booked, $8 lessons with, and since then they've like really like kind of like catapulted, they've just skyrocketed because their lessons are very high quality, you know so yeah, like I don't discriminate based on how many lessons somebody has taught, right? Yeah. Jennifer said she signed up a month ago but hasn't started teaching. She's opened up the schedule for next week. How long does it take to build up regular bookings? I've heard some people say they never get students. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. So it really depends on how much availability you have. How much availability do you have? Let's start with that. For me, I started with 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. You don't necessarily need that, but I think that having like a good amount of availability, at least 7 hours a day, 5 days a week would be ideal. Mode, I'll get to that in just a second. Um, but yeah, I mean, for me, it took me barely a month and a half to really get a wave of students. It happened in January of 2020. Yeah. Um, to build up regular bookings, this kind of goes hand in hand with establishing relationships with loyal students, creating a plan with your loyal students. I think there's a correlation with having a good trial lesson, a good first few lessons. So I suggest that you look at, you plan out your first 5 lessons with your students. You brainstorm some excellent activities, and some, you find some grammatical concepts or some vocabulary, some topics that you could go over with your students as well. Um, if you have a great first 5 lessons, then that means the if your students are booking 1 lesson a week, your first 5 weeks will be awesome, and then hopefully they'll book another 10 lessons, and right there you have a loyal student. Well, that's what I consider a loyal student if they're booking like 15 to 20 lessons. So basically, focus on getting maybe 10 students to book a package or 2 packages, especially if they're children. A lot of parents will book until the cows come home. They'll book like 40 or 50 lessons in advance, because they want the best for their child, right? And their children aren't as busy as adults may be. So I think there's no reason why you can't do this in 2 months, but it really depends on which language you teach. It depends on your qualifications. It depends on how much availability you have, what your price is. That's what it depends on. Open availability, low price, a well-qualified teacher or a teacher with great resources and great planning, a fantastic profile. It shouldn't take you more than a month and a half. From what I've seen, this is all based on my experience and what I have seen from sitting down with other teachers like yourselves and having consultations and them telling me their stories. Okay, and Joe says, I shared the same experience. It took me 2 weeks to get okay, well, there you go, 2 weeks. Promoted mouth to mouth. Yeah, by the way, word of mouth is very useful in iTalki. You'll be surprised by the amount of students who tell their friends and tell their partners, their significant others, their family members, about you. Like, I have had just kind of webs, like little networks of students who are friends with one another or family members, and I've been able to build loyal relationships with my students through that. So that's something you could explicitly even say to your students. If you refer me to another student, I'll give you a nice little discount in future lessons. Why not? Okay, Maud, what's the worst interaction with a student? Well, I hate to say this with a big smile on my face, but it would be like, it depends what you define as bad, and there's also a few in the running, I think, right? Like, I've had a few bad, kind of bad finishes with students, for lack of a better term, right? Like, where our classes ended on a bad note, right? One of them, the worst I think would be with a student who I was preparing for IELTS, and he was just frustrated. Like, he absolutely did not get the coherence and cohesion aspect of IELTS, how to stay on topic in IELTS writing part 2, how to answer the question, how to structure the essay. I think that's just a common trend. The classes that I've had, a lot of them If they end negatively, like my relationship with my students is one of two things: is either disrespect, meaning that they're eating in class, showing up late for class, or asking me to reschedule the class, and then I say no, and then they're like, okay, fine, we could do the class, which I find is kind of disrespectful as well. So it's either that, like a lack of courtesy, let's group it like that, or it is a lack of tolerance for the difficulties in the English language, right? Which is a skill and a competency and a strategy that we all have to develop as language learners, right? We have to develop a tolerance, a threshold for just dealing with exceptions and dealing with the difficult parts of learning a language, the irregular verbs, for example. And what happened with this student is that he had, like I would correct his writing bits with him, and he would start with the huffing and puffing, and his face would kind of go red, and it would just be like, I just don't get this, I don't understand this. And yeah, and one time I just had enough of it, and I noticed him huffing and puffing, and I just kind of ignored it, and I just continued correcting the writing because I knew that he just wanted me to kind of say, "Oh, what is wrong?" Right? And to kind of, like hold his hand through it, which I know is something that we should be doing as teachers. And I think that I lost my patience on that day, so I chose to ignore the huffing and puffing, pretend it wasn't happening, and just kind of go along with the correction. And at the end of that, he just said, "Okay, no, like I don't want to. I don't think we should have class anymore." And that's how it ended. And I think for me as a teacher, I have, there are lessons that I've learned. Now, the question, has it has a student ever tried to argue? Gosh, yeah, definitely. Like I have a few students who are very confrontational, but I've learned that it's just their personality. Like they're not trying to be disrespectful or anything like that, but they do question me. They do tell me, "Well, my other teacher told me this. My other teacher told me this," or like in the textbook it said this. And after some, at first I would just say, "Okay, well, let's have a look online. Let's look at the rules together. I'll send them some resources. I'll explain, how their teachers conceptualization is correct in some situations, but this one is also correct in some situations. And pragmatically speaking, this one is more correct, you know. But then it's gotten to the point with some of these students where I have to just tell them, okay, your teacher is wrong. Unfortunately, like your other teacher, whoever they were wrong, and I have to be very explicit with that. So in terms of students trying to argue, yes, that has happened, but I've developed very strong relationships with these students. So I have a high tolerance for this, and I know it's not personal. I know some of them are they just like to play devil's advocate. And sometimes I have had to tell them, um, no, we're not going to reanalyze every single little aspect of your, like you're asking too many questions, basically. Like ask me after class. You could send me a message whenever you want to, but you are being too nitpicky. You're being a little bit too critical right now, and we need to get through the material in the lesson. So that's happened as well. Aside from that, yeah, especially when I first got started, there were, my price was lower as a teacher. I had more students who were more critical. Less of them had as much experience with learning English. So they had less of a tolerance of understanding why there are irregularities in English, why there are bizarre pronunciation patterns, right? And with some of those students, I had to, they got very frustrated, and I tried to be as patient as possible, and sometimes it worked out, sometimes it didn't. Okay, so Joe, thanks for sharing that. Yep. Which type of teachers attracts more students? Professional or community tutors? A community tutor, but thinking of upgrading. Well, that's fantastic. For me, as a student, I book mainly with community tutors because I like the lack, not like there's always a lack of organization, but from my experience, professional teachers have had more activities than community tutors. And I actually prefer just an informal conversation, right? As a student. So I think it could be beneficial to be a community tutor, and I don't discriminate, but I do think that it's fantastic for anybody who wants to develop professionally as a teacher, no matter what it is. And professional teachers, by nature, do usually have a TEFL or a TESOL or a TESOL, and they've gone one step further to kind of develop themselves professionally. So all the power to you. So to answer your question, who attracts more students? I think professional teachers. I know, like I've actually created questionnaires for some of my students to get feedback from them. And I actually did this a couple months ago when I asked them why they booked lessons with me. And one of the questions was like, if it's because I'm a professional teacher or because of my experience. And a few students said yes, but not as many students as the amount who said because of my values as a teacher, because of my approach and my style, or because I'm Canadian. Those were the bigger things. So it's kind of like it's not a straightforward answer, Jennifer. I'm sorry, but basically there are a few factors of why students book lessons with you, and I've seen a lot of community tutors with like 5,000 plus lessons taught, so they could absolutely be successful. But I do think for the amount of money that you make and the amount of students that you're able to teach, being a professional teacher could definitely be more beneficial, I would say. All right. Joe, have you ever dealt with a student who doesn't want to do homework at all, doesn't revise by themselves? Yep, absolutely. Like teacher is a wizard that, whoa, you read my mind. Exactly. And that's one of the things that just have driven me up the wall. It's like, if you don't want to do your homework, no problem. And I give my students the option to do their homework, but I have recently developed an ability to, well, not an ability, but I've been more cognizant with explaining to my students what I expect from them and what they have to do and what they're allowed to complain about if they do it and nothing happens. So in other words, I explain to them, this is the homework. This is supposed to allow you to reach X level, be that band 7 speaking or C1. If you don't do the homework and if you don't communicate with me about why you're not doing the homework, you are not going to get there. So I've improved my competency with actually communicating this and being more transparent and clear. And yes, absolutely, I've had some students who will literally not do any of the homework, which is like, my homework isn't, like a magic bag of beans that's gonna that's gonna like solve all your problems. Who am I to say that it's the only way to improve? But I'm saying some of my students will not try to develop their own strategies. They will not take my feedback or consider my feedback. They won't practice on their own, and they have gone frustrated about not seeing results. My suggestion, Joe, be honest with them, be straight with them. You won't improve, you won't achieve these outcomes if you don't um, at least consider being critical in your language learning experience. That doesn't mean doing everything I say, because I'm just a mere mortal, but that means that you're exploring online, you're going on Reddit, you're seeing what other people have done, how they have been successful, and you're trying to incorporate some of those aspects of language learning into your own repertoire, right? So I suggest that if you have students who are so critical that they're not doing any of your homework and they still expect you to do everything for them, or they still expect for you to be a wizard and kind of abracadabra the English or the French or whatever into them, I suggest that you just explain to them you are you have a lot of resources online. You could take charge of your language learning experience, make it student centered, and show yourself, explore and discover different resources which could help you in the future. But you have to do it, and I can't read your mind. and and know where you're at in your language learning experience all the time, especially if you're not communicating with me and not finishing the homework. So I hope that answers your question. But yes, this has happened. This happens a lot with parents. I know a lot of the time parents will expect you in 3 lessons to turn their children into, a completely proficient speaker, and that doesn't happen either. It definitely requires patience. But that doesn't mean that we just say be patient. That means we make realistic goals with our students. Right. You're very welcome. Yeah, I know. I'm there with you. Okay, and Maud says if your student should be respectful because someone is taking time out of their day to teach you and assist you with your work. That's how I view it. Yeah, definitely. All right, you're welcome, Jennifer. Blurb season. What's your thoughts on increasing implicit knowledge for our English students? Yeah, well, a lot of what I work on is definitely noticing, right? So, our students' ability to notice and make their own connections between things. So it's not just about, explaining grammatical rules explicitly, for example, but it's also having a good range of different strategy to allow them to implicitly recognize some areas for improvement. So I do this with writing. I share a Google Doc with them, and instead of just explaining, okay, this is wrong, we say, I go to the gym, not I go on the gym, for example. Instead of explaining that, I would highlight the sentence and get them to read the sentence, and I'll say, what is the problem with this sentence? Or another thing I could do is actually highlight the preposition and say, okay, this is not the correct preposition. Which preposition should we be using? So these are all different ways of, trying to improve a student's writing implicitly. And this could be done with reading, listening, and speaking as well. But yeah, at the end of the day, I try to get my students to make their own connections instead of like serving it on a silver platter for them. Um, this could be, for example, recently I've done this subtitle analysis activity where I get my students to find a Netflix show, watch it, look at the subtitles, and explain if the subtitles are accurate or if it's not. And they do it in their native language actually, but communicate it to me in English. So I think that's another way, by pairing the learning of a target language, English in this case, with their own native language, and actually pairing these two together, and having activities which are around it, which revolve around that could actually help improve the your students' ability to notice things and to make their own connections without you kind of just serving it to them explicitly. Alina, welcome. Did you have to become an officially self-employed? Yeah. And it's not needed when you work for the platform. I'm thinking about legal part taxes. Thank you. I don't hmm, hmm, hmm. Yeah, so I am self-employed. Yeah. So I'm considered self-employed. So the way that I did my taxes in Canada, yes, I'm legally self-employed. Mhm. So I actually have a video on my YouTube channel which talks about doing taxes on iTalki, so you could check that out. Hopefully it's useful for you. All right, I'll stick around for 5 more minutes. Does anybody have any more questions about teaching on iTalki? And while I wait, oh, geez. While I wait, I'm going to check some of these lesson requests. Has anybody else been teaching today? Getting some lessons in before the new year? Guess we're still a couple weeks away from New Year's. That's what I'm going to do in Spain then. Yes, great stuff. Good stuff, Alina. I hope that's I hope that works out for you. Which language do you teach, Alina? You're very welcome, Joe. Awesome. Okay, excellent. I can't wait to see you on there. Come say hi sometime. Let me know how you're doing, for sure. Is there a peak season? Gosh, yeah, I get asked this all the time. Well, from my experience, it's spring. Yeah, from my experience, it's spring. You should have seen it was buzzing on iTalki for me last spring, March, April, May. Oh God, it was a good time to be alive. Good time to be teaching on iTalki for me. Blurb season. Yes. So far from what I've learned from teaching so far, I've seen there's two types of learning, implicit and explicit. Yeah. Okay. Implicit is automatic, and I wouldn't really conceptualize it that way. See, like we could be talking about implicit versus explicit correction, like corrective feedback, which is what I took from your question, blurb season. But perhaps there's another way of looking at implicit versus explicit that I don't know about, and this is a little automatic versus non-automatic. Okay, I get what you're saying. So maybe it's like it's mediated, like learning is mediated through the teacher's explicit instruction, and for that reason, it's non-automatic, whereas it's implicit if the student can make the connection themselves, perhaps. Sven, all right, good stuff. Well, that was a kitty cat every time. I wish my cats were here to say hi. Another question, how much time would you suggest I wait before reapplying to iTalki, and does iTalki accept a TESOL from International Open Academy? Good question. I don't know if they accept TESOL from there, actually. I wonder if they have a website. Like, no, because there are so many different schools popping up all the time, so they'd never have that. But yeah, I'm not sure if they accept that or not. I've seen International Open Academy before. That's online TESOL as well. I'm pretty sure, right? You're welcome, no problem. And I think the amount of time to wait before reapplying, I'd say just like whenever they allow you, they accept your application again, maybe 2 weeks. That's how long I waited before I reapplied. Alina, got my first booking of the Russian language. Nice. Let's check out Alina's profile, since I've been looking for Russian teachers. I wonder if I could just put keyword. Looking for Alina. Okay, I found you from Latvia. Very cool. Awesome. And you teach English as well. Wow, talk about multilingual. That's awesome. Well, best of luck, Alina. I hope it all works out for you. And congratulations as well. If anyone's looking to learn Russian, check out Alina's profile. And I believe she teaches other languages as well. Let me see. She also teaches English. Happy days. She teaches Russian for beginners. Excellent stuff. That's good. Happy to see teachers booking, teaching beginners as well. Thanks for that. I need to take note. Okay, excellent. I hope that this has been useful for everybody. I'll end it right there. I'll be doing another Q&A in a little bit, maybe one in January, just to see how everyone's getting along, or how everyone's getting on with their New Year's resolutions and with their the start to their new year. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the comment section after I publish this. All right. And if you celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Happy holidays to everybody. All right. Merry Christmas. I know it's a little bit premature, but all right. Happy days. Best of luck to everybody. You're very no problem, Alina. All right. Take it easy, Moosh. See you later, Diane and Sven and Blurb Season and everybody else. All right. Happy days. See you later.